This is such a massive. It was a massive problem a decade ago, and now it's reached the point where it is likely that the United States will not get out of this the same and be the same country.
We've got to acknowledge. Were you going to say something?
Just that Yuri Bezmenov said it was one generation was all you needed to demoralize, and then you could destabilize a country. And you're saying like 10 years, so another 5 years.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And people are still arguing as to if this is even happening.
Yeah,
We're all born equal, legally equal, but we're not all the same, and we all come from different nutrition backgrounds. And if our parents were poor, they didn't have access to nutrition, maybe their brains weren't as developed, so their child's brains aren't as developed. And then if I come from poverty, maybe I'll be poor too, and I won't have good brain matter. My kids won't either. So there's like, then when you're like, you throw all these kids in school and you're like, learn math. The kids that don't have the brain matter, that come from poverty, struggle because they don't have the mental capacity. But that doesn't mean you take those kids and you shove them into CEO positions just so that you have enough color, like the same color or the right color. Like, you've also got to let people flounder. Like, it's the sad nature of reality. If people come from suffering, they've got to either figure it out for themselves. I mean, at least that seems to be the least worst way forward, is to let people do it on their own instead of force feed and force the system into. But I mean, I'm totally down with like the descendants of slaves in the United States had it, like, they come from generational poverty and lack of nutrition. Not everybody, but some of those families do. So that's a real problem. But I don't think forcing them into positions of power is the right way to solve for it, or to give them money. You know, you got to feed them. You know, you could argue like healthy food, but that would be like society wide. That wouldn't just be, you wouldn't just want to target little communities with good nutrition. You could. Maybe potentially, you know, food stamps tend to get people Pepsi. I've seen that you can buy Pepsi with food stamps. That's insane to me. I agree.
I mean, there's all kinds of problems with like entitlement programs and stuff like that. But the fundamental thing that you're talking about is whether or not people have, you know, the ability to, you know, provide sustenance for themselves. And I don't know that there's a significant amount of hunger in the United States to the point where it's affecting whether or not people like develop properly. Like, I get that happens in like North Korea. Like, you get people that are so malnourished, they don't, you know, they're 2 inches shorter than people in South Korea or whatever. But I don't know if that's happening in the U.S. Is it?
Well, I imagine after like 1860s, people were pretty poor in the Depression. 7 million people died during the Great Depression.
I mean, that kind of stuff you're talking about is stuff that would happen now to people born now, though, right?
And now it's not that they don't have food, it's that they don't have nutrition. Like, a lot of the preservatives and stuff sold in the cheap food at the store is
it
like...
actually makes them obese.
Yes, which is also, that's not feeding the brain properly, in my opinion. Like, it's creating another struggle, because like I don't know if obesity is generational. Do obese parents tend to give birth to children that are prone to obesity?
They don't give birth to them, but obesity is behavior based. If you don't move enough and you don't exercise
the
enough,
habits
then
as
you're
well. Like the food that they get taught to eat when they're kids as well. Like, if they don't have the people telling them how to cook and what they should be cooking, and then they'll probably just eat prepackaged food their entire life, and that does happen all the time.
And then they raise their kids like that, and then those habits you develop at a really young age, you carry them forward with you, and then you teach your kids those bad habits unless you break that cycle.
Well, I suppose, you know, you want reparations, you got to teach people to break that cycle. And first, they got to even know what that cycle is, which requires some education.